Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the December 6, 2024 meeting of the Pima County Election Integrity Commission. For those that are able, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Commissioner Atkins is not here, and it's my understanding she has resigned from the commission. Commissioner DeLarge. What?
Mike?
You're not going to hear him in here.
Okay.
There's no speakers.
Oh, so red means it's on?
The red means it's on.
Oh, sorry about that.
Commissioner DeLarge, Commissioner Mace, Commissioner Caswell, Commissioner Tillman.
Here.
Commissioner Stewart.
Here.
Commissioner Smith, Matt. Commissioner Strabela. Commissioner Smith, Tiana. Director Hargrove. And the chair is here. At this time, we do not have a quorum. So unless somebody else shows up, we can't take any action, but we can certainly listen to a lot of information. And the first item on the agenda is a discussion of the Pima County Recorder's final 2024 general election results. Chief Deputy Recorder Chevon, would you?
I'm hoping that you're not too disappointed by my answers about this, but we are in the process currently of putting together an after-action report. It was a big election, as you know. The presidential elections are high turnout, lots of participants. We had some hiccups in the election, beginning with ballots being delayed, being mailed out. It's our intention to do a very comprehensive after-action report presented to the Board of Supervisors at their January 7th board meeting. That will include all the statistics that are, you can find those in the canvas that are currently, that were approved by the Pima County Board of Supervisors and compiled by the Elections Department. But our numbers are all in there, numbers beyond what's required by statute. We have worked very diligently this year to streamline our reporting in terms of some of our online reports. You may have seen we put out a couple of media releases about our new security page. I spoke about it here, I think the last time I was here. We have a security page that talks about security of all of our processes, how we maintain the security of the ballots and the infrastructure, as well as our ballot processing page, which was really helpful for campaigns and for media to see how many ballots we had received, where they were in the process, how many have been returned, including the ballot curing reports that showed all of the reasons why a ballot may not be immediately signature verified and accepted and turned over to the Elections Department. But all of those were live as far as the report would run in the evening and then it would show up the next day. We couldn't have it be a live report because it would be referencing our database and slowing down the important work that we do. And so we got a lot of positive response from that. I do want to address the chain of custody documents that were brought up in this meeting.
It's on the agenda later if you wouldn't mind waiting.
It was anyway, a lot of work. There were some hiccups that presented some challenges to our staff, but our staff did an amazing job. They work 11, 12 hours a day during this period with no days off for weeks at a time. And I couldn't be more proud of them. They did a remarkable job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Discussion on the Pima County Elections Office final 2024 results. Jeremy, you want to address that?
Sure. So I would also kind of echo what Marion said. We are also presenting a detailed after action report to the Board of Supervisors for that first January meeting. That is where you'll find a more comprehensive account of everything that happened for us as a department leading up to the election and on election day. So we won't get into a whole lot of specifics here. Of course, all the information is in Canvas, as you've probably all seen. It was a successful election for us. We had over 70,000 people vote on election day at both centers. I think everything went very well. We did have one race, as many of you know, that went to a recount. That is where Director Hargrove is today. They are holding a hearing this morning where the judge will release the results of the recount for the sheriff race.
Okay. Questions from anybody that's here?
Two comments for both of you. I think the election went pretty damn well based on everything I've seen so far, so congratulations. There's always going to be hiccups, especially when you have so many hands either in the state legislature or the federal government trying to add more constraints and avenues and God knows what else that I know make your life more difficult. But generally, I thought it went pretty well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tillman?
Yeah, I'd like to compliment all the staff on a really well-run election. I know there were problems like when people got sick, lack of staff, there were all kinds of issues, and they overcame them very successfully. We had observers all the time in the elections department, and we're just very impressed with how things went. We were a little disappointed by the restriction on observers in the recorder's office. However, we used to have much more latitude to see things in the recorder's office, but not this time, and sometime I'd like to know why. But otherwise, I want to compliment everybody on a very well done job.
Thank you. Discussion of the Pima County Recorder's plan to address the unvoted return ballots and unresolved provisional conditional ballots.
I'm not sure what that is about.
Well, I'm not either, and the person who put it on the agenda isn't here, so we'll table that motion until somebody that knows what it's about is available. Looking at the next several agenda items, an overview of the Recorder's Office proposed plans to improve reduced ballot processing as well as elections. I'm assuming.
I can actually speak to that.
Fine.
To our end, and it's very exciting news. We just took possession of a new building right across the parking lot from our old space. We toured it. We're in the very beginning stages of designing what our needs are going to be, but we will have so many more workstations in that building. We're
New building, you're talking about Country Club?
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so for ballot processing. Right now, we're really limited by how many people we can fit in our space. And the signature verification is one of the largest delays in processing early ballots. And so we're really excited about that. That's one of the ways that we're addressing it. Other than that, it's a very manual process by design. Like, we can either have it be secure or quick is one of the things that we like to say in our office. There's no way to speed up that process without compromising the mandatory procedures set forth by statute. So, unless they change the law, which I understand there's a push or is introduced and assigned to committee, we follow the statute, which is that ballots can be dropped off as late as 7 p.m. on election night. So,
In a perfect world today, in your current location, how many ballots could you process in a normal workday?
It ranges, because of timing of when we get them and when we can, process them.
They're there, there's more than you could process available to process if you,
Between 20 and 30,000 we
A day.
can process a day.
do you anticipate that increasing significantly in the new location?
It should, yes.
Any idea? Double, triple, 50% more?
I have no idea.
Okay,
I have no idea.
okay.
Yeah, is that also limited by the number of staff you can afford to pay to do that? Or is that,
Surprisingly, in an election, it's really the printing and postage costs. That,
well, we're talking about processing early ballots, right?
yeah,
Okay, so they're already there,
yeah.
and you say you can do 20 to 30,000 of them per day currently.
Mhm.
You have how many workstations now that you're able to work in?
Yeah,
And
I
you'll
think
have
around
so many
40.
more workstations in the future, but what's the next fundamental limit that you run into? Is it,
Hiring and training.
okay,
No, I don't think, I think that's one of the positions that people really like.
okay,
Hiring for voting sites is much more challenging, but hiring for our signature verification, we have some people who've been doing it for 20, 25 years. We have new people who come and pick it up right away. It's steady work, so when the challenge of hiring intermittent work is that it's intermittent and seasonal. Sometimes it's not even full-time. But the signature verification is full-time in an election like that, and so it's a little less challenging because we can offer people 40 hours a week, basically, for the duration of the early voting period. And so we don't necessarily have a challenge hiring people. Sometimes hiring a party balance is a challenge. We don't have as many people who are Republicans applying for those positions, so that can be a challenge because we have to have party balance in areas like tables, that sort of thing, and I know the elections department has that same issue. I'd really like to see some efforts from those who represent that party really working to get some of their PCs coming in. I think it would also help to educate on the processes and maybe quell a few concerns about those processes. But for the most part, we don't have a hard time finding
okay.
people.
So the fundamental limit is the number of
It's the
workstations?
space.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, Jeremy, are you guys moving too?
We are not moving, depending on what happens with the space they are currently in. We're not trying to steal it yet. But yes, that's a possibility. So no, we don't have any plans to move now.
So logistically, now the ballots come in the back door at the recorder's office, they get processed, they go through the double shared room door
Yes,
into
yes.
elections. Are you gonna be rolling
We don't
racks
know
of
yet.
ballots through
We
the?
don't know yet.
Okay,
We're exploring lots of options. I recommended a covered breezeway that went across to the buildings, but apparently that's not in the budget, so.
location.
Yes, it's-
Which building are you moving to? North of your current location?
Yes, the address is 3000 East Valencia, and it's Suite 190, so it is the eastmost corner of the building. And I believe the approval of the lease it was in November 16th, something, meeting of the Board of Supervisors has a schematic and everything of the building, so you can see it there. But we just toured it with Pima County ITD Networking, Pima County IT Department, our business systems manager who manages all projects, Pima County Security, Physical Security, Facilities Management. We just got the keys on Sunday and toured it on Wednesday.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like to add to the speed of elections, Jeremy?
No, we are still evaluating, of course, everything with our processes, with election ballot processing. As far as early voting and all of that coming through, obviously it was a challenge, this time with the two-card ballot. Basically makes everything take twice as long, but we're still looking through all our processes with that.
Well, and I guess the only comment I'd make there is having participated in the tabulation observation process myself, we were waiting on input from the recorder's office as far as being able to tabulate. We tabulated faster than you gave us ballots, which I think is a good thing, and I think there's changes that have occurred, particularly in the adjudication process, that make the whole system function much better. And I think there's a definitive answer now as to where the sticking point is in the process, and obviously that's being addressed to some degree by increasing the number of people that an audit during the process. But any manual process is going to take longer than an automated process. So.
Right, and I can say that one of the things that we implemented at the sites was asking people, it seems like a small thing, but asking people to, if they were dropping their ballots, to take their affidavits out of the yellow mailing envelope, because every single one of those has to be opened,
Mm-hmm.
and then the ballot pulled out. And so if at the sites we could catch folks before they put them in, we would ask them to remove it. We only had a couple of people that were uncomfortable with that, but for the most part it worked really well and cut down on some of the time that it took.
You do have an automatic envelope opener though, right?
Oh, of course. Well, it opens it, but
It doesn't take it out.
take anything out.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think we've covered your plans to improve processing time, and yours as well, Jeremy. Discussion of problems with early ballots, mailed late, and ballot requests at the registration cutoff. And I think that's a recorder's issue.
That is definitely ours. However, the ballots mailed late was a countywide issue. I think we've spoken at great length about this. The county administration has, as well as ITD and elections department. We found out, I believe it's like October or September 20th, that there was a boundary that was wrong on the county GIS district boundaries. In 2022, from 2020, prior to this administration, the former administration instituted a project to move our addressing for voting districts from a street address to using county GIS information. And so starting in 2022, I think it was in May, we just began downloading that information from county GIS. And just inadvertently at a candidate forum, somebody mentioned that they were paying taxes in one school district, but they were being forced to send their kids to another one. And it started a conversation that we were late to find out about. As soon as we found out, our ballot printer was about to begin the printing of over 400,000 ballots. So it was a very exciting evening for myself and Pima County GIS department, calling our printer representative at home while she was making dinner for her family. We managed to have them stop the process, and it took us a little while to figure out which were the correct districts. And in that process, the elections department identified that there were a few households that were still in the wrong district. They had to create new ballot styles, which I learned a lot about that process. It's fascinating. I'm so happy to have that knowledge. Wish it had been in a different time. But all of this caused about a week delay in mailing ballots. And I think that it created sort of a what do you call that? Snowball. Thank you. Snowball effect, where people received text notifications from us that said that their ballot was mailed on October 9th, which is a process that we are doing away with, and we're coming up with other structure in order, or other wording, because it isn't accurate. We have never, since we started texting voters, we've never had ballots required, but they've always been mailed the day that they're required, or the first day of early voting, and the following day. The printers just, they don't have the capacity to mail all of the ballots, and neither the USPS doesn't have the capacity to receive them all in one day. So they usually go in 2 trucks on 2 days. This delayed it by a week, and therefore we had a lot of voters who received a text that said your ballot has been mailed on October 9th, and by the 13th or 14th they're calling our office, and they were also putting in duplicate requests in our online ballot request form. We were able to process, we had about 30,000 requests in that form. It's a very manual form. I discovered this during the primary election and created a user story, which is project management language for our data team to redesign that process, because right now it's not tied to any voter record. There's no validating yourself. You just put in information and it puts it into basically a spreadsheet for us. And so our staff have to look at every single ballot request, look up that voter in our voter registration program, and see if they've already got a ballot request in there. Are they eligible? Have they been deactivated because there was an address issue, there was election mail returned? So it's very manual. We were able to process about 20,000 of those requests up until October, I think it was 19th. And then there were still 10,000 in that queue, and I knew we weren't going to make it. We weren't going to be able to process all of those. I think we had a statement up on our website. I just want to look at some numbers so I make sure I get them right. Did everyone see the statement on our website?
I did not.
Okay.
I confess I did not even look.
Okay. It's under our section of I think it's media releases and announcements, and there's a lot of information in there. So of the 20,000 or so that we processed before removing the online form, only about less than 8,000 were actually valid requests. And so it's a very low percentage of requests that are actually valid requests. So we're doing a lot of effort. So I had flagged that in the future. What we're going to be doing is we're going to, the voter is going to validate, answer some security questions, just like they do when they look at their voting history or their sign up for online or for text notifications. They have to validate themselves somehow. We'll be using it that way, and then the information will be right in there, and if they're not eligible or they need to call our office because they're not active voters, then there will be a message to that effect. It'll take the human element out of it, and it'll automatically put, if they are eligible and they don't already have a request in, either because they're on the active early voting list or they put in another request, and some people do that, then then it will automatically put them in the queue to have a ballot mailed to them. And so we didn't have the capacity to do that for this large general election. Our developers were madly developing in order to just make the changes that were necessary in the last legislative session, the changes to requirements for documented proof of citizenship and residency that were changing every day because of court orders, because of guidance from the Secretary of State, guidance from the Attorney General. It was a very challenging election leading up to early voting out. So our had no idea. We're just tapped out. They couldn't have done during. We had no idea that it was going to be honestly so taxed during the general election. But on a Saturday evening, I was working at our ballot processing facility, and I kept asking, where are we at on our queue? Where's the queue? Where's the queue? And I made a decision that night to turn off the queue, email all of the people who had put in a request. We removed about half of them because there were duplicates in there. Another piece of that is that we didn't have any way to associate the data that they put into this form, because like I said, it's basically just a spreadsheet line, with a voter. There was no way for us to do that. Otherwise, we would have done that. But we decided to email around, it was like 3,900 voters received an email from us. And these voters were expecting an email from us because we told that when they submitted their form, that when their form was processed, they would receive an email confirmation from us. So we felt very confident that we were going to reach these voters, and we asked that they call our office. It was the right decision, and I stand by it 100%. I would say my only regret is that we were so focused on reaching those voters that we didn't put out a media release. And then there was a concern that we were trying to hide something. That wasn't the case at all. So in our media release that you'll see on our website, we were incredibly prepared for the barrage of phone calls that came in. When the phone lines get turned on, we had 85 callers in the queue. We had all of our staff on the phones. And on Monday, we answered 3,500 phone calls with around 30 people and answering those calls. We processed 1,858 vote-by-mail ballot requests. So I was monitoring this the entire time. Another piece of data that's not in our release is that we sent out 3,900 emails. There were 3,459 unique opens of those emails, which is a remarkable amount. It's 89% opens. So 89% of the people who received the email saying, we couldn't process your request for some reason, please call our office, opened it. And the number of phone calls in the data that we gathered made us feel very confident that we reached those folks. Now, we can't guarantee that we reached every single person, but I will tell you that we worked really hard to try and reach those folks. We sent out 3 emails, put information up on our website. When the media was tipped off about it by an email, I gave an interview to a reporter, and he was going to run it on Saturday, which was later than the deadline. So I asked him why. You can make a difference by running this earlier and maybe reaching some of those other voters. He did do that. Unfortunately, he published the wrong phone number. But we were able to, on Friday, it was a Pima County number, and we were able to ask this person to give up her phone number to us for the day, and then Pima County ITD, the telecom, had that number directed directly to us. So, you know, elections, there are a lot of moving pieces. It's very complicated. There are human beings doing this work. They're not robots. There are errors always. You can't always anticipate the impact that one action is going to have, but I'm really proud of our office and our staff, and we were really focusing on just making sure that there was as little impact as possible and that we could get those ballots mailed to voters. And we were mailing ballots to voters that already had a request in. We already had information that they had received, or that they had a ballot had been brought to the post office, but we were still putting in requests if they didn't have it yet. So we didn't want to take any chances. We wanted to make sure. At one point, we were just advising people to go vote early if they didn't get their ballot in time. So, you know, one of the things that I would like to emphasize is that no voter was disenfranchised. It was an inconvenience, and it's an inconvenience of that we pay a system that we inherited, that we will be fixing before the next election. However, you know, we work really hard to serve every single voter. I had a friend share with me, I can't believe how personal your interactions with voters are. Like we fielded, I think it was like, I haven't gotten the statistics from Telecom for November, but in that week after we closed that online form, we fielded close to 10,000 calls. Just our small staff of 30 people, including me. I fielded about 1,200 of those.
So to put this in a nutshell, basically it's a problem you had to deal with that wasn't of your making.
Yes,
Okay. You took the heat.
we did.
I
I
have a
did.
question.
Commissioner Tillman.
Would it have been technically possible to tell Runbeck to mail only all the ballots except the ones from the affected precinct?
No, they
Okay.
were already printed.
But they
Hadn't put them together yet.
They weren't organized by precinct?
No, they don't organize. I
Or
found
by
that
zip
out
code?
this election too. They're not organized by precinct.
Okay.
Yeah, I did ask. Mhm.
Or even, are they organized by zip code?
I have to go back and look at the answer. It was a very busy time. I think it had to do with zip code. I'll get back to you on that because I did get an answer from our printer about that. I was asking how they were organized because there were people who were saying, it's not zip code, because there were people who were saying, my neighbor got their ballot and I didn't get mine, and we were trying to identify why that was. But yeah, I think it's a combination.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, it seems like it ought to be organized by precinct. But you asked, or you mentioned that of the 20,000 that were in that first batch before you hit the cutoff, that only a very small percentage of them were valid requests.
Valid requests, yes.
But you also said about 8,000 were.
So the 8,000 that were left in the, after we closed the form that hadn't been processed yet.
Okay, gotcha. So about of the 20,000, about how many were?
Let's see, I have that in here. about 7,000, I believe. So I think it works out to like 38%.
Okay.
So the
That's a
reasons,
significant percentage. It's not a small percentage.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
The reasons is that the voter already voted, as time went on, less and less of them were valid because they had actually
Yes.
voted early or gotten their ballots, or called our office to get a ballot. So, so they already voted, they already had a request because a request was going in, although it was delayed, which caused a lot of this issue. Voter wasn't registered. There were duplicate requests, or they didn't give us enough information, like they neglected to put in a birth date, or they put in the wrong birth date, which is just typos. But there's, I mean, our staff will look for a name and look for a birth date that is some like proximity to the one that they put in. This is the kind of manual work it takes sometimes. Sometimes they are inactive because a ballot was returned. This is a problem for a lot of snowbirds. Snowbirds they're gone over the summer, and we send out a ballot in the summer, and it gets returned to us, and their record becomes deactivated, and they have to either confirm that they are still at that address or that they have moved. But they have to, oftentimes, if they have moved, they have to go in person and make that change. So sometimes it's a lot of back and forth where we're calling voters and telling them why.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the snowbird issue is enhanced by the fact that ballots are not forwardable, correct?
Correct. So the way that works, and you can find all that information in our list maintenance document that we've presented here and is now on our website as well. When official election mail is mailed to a home, and it comes back as undeliverable because either they have a temporary away notice on their record, or they no longer live there, or they have a forwarding notice, that ballot is returned as undeliverable. This is how we keep our rolls and clean, knowing where people actually live. And one of the things that we discuss, because there are a lot of snowbirds in Pima County. I don't know if you knew that. But that people come back and they're really surprised. They get this letter that says if you don't call us in a certain amount of time, then your record will be deactivated. Well, that sounds like their registration is going to be canceled. It's concerning to people. So one of the things that we've decided to do is create a web page. We're already designing it specifically for folks who are here only seasonally, to answer their questions. One of the things we started to recommend is that they do not sign themselves up for the active early voting list if they're concerned, because this will happen every summer.
Can a voter have an out-of-state address for their mailing address?
Yes, they can, but they can't be on the active early voting list.
Okay.
So their mailing address can be out of state, right? I'm sorry. I don't know if that's true.
I mean,
Yeah, they have to put in a one-time request for the ballot every time.
okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a snowbird is probably never going to be here for a primary.
Right,
And the general, some of them will, some of them won't.
right.
But if you know you're not going to be here and your mailing address
Yes.
is an out-of-state address,
Yes, you can't have an out-of-state mailing address and be on the active early voting list.
okay,
But you can request a one-time for each election, which is what we started to recommend to them. Otherwise, they're just gonna have to do that process every time. When they get the letter, call our office, confirm that they live there.
okay. Anything else? Now, chain of custody.
He didn't do the ballot request part.
Yeah, that was what,
That's what we've been
The
told.
phone, not really. About people who were still on the phone at 11:30 trying to get their ballot, and they couldn't get in, and so they didn't get a ballot. That's the issue I was talking about.
11:30.
At 11:30 p.m. of the deadline day, they couldn't get in and get their ballot requests because the system was busy.
So the online ballot request was not online anymore. And it was turned off on I believe it was the 19th of October.
So some people complained that the phone lines were busy. They were trying to phone in a ballot request, and the phone lines were busy, and then the deadline came, and then they couldn't request it.
So our phone lines, on that first day after we closed the request, admittedly, were very jammed up. It took us probably a couple of hours to get the queue down to a reasonable amount. I was managing the phone queue throughout the entire election. Typically, the longest wait time is 4 minutes, around 4 minutes. On that first day, it was closer to 5. Those first 2 hours, though, were not great. People were online on the phones or gave up after 15 minutes. That was about the longest time that people were on the queue. But throughout the week, the phones calmed down. And like I said, there may have been times when staff were at lunch, for instance, and all of a sudden, if you've ever worked in a restaurant sometimes, all of a sudden you've got 20 people that walk in and they're in separate parties, you have no idea why. That happens with the phone sometimes, but for the most part, and I have data to back it up, the wait times were no more than 4 or 5 minutes on average. So anytime that we had people, more than like 10 people in the queue and the wait time was anywhere close to 5 minutes, I would start walking around our office and asking people to get on the phones, or messaging our ballot processing facility, and we pulled people from other tasks in order. Very important to have people handle phones during this time. I don't know what to say about that, other than I'm sure that there were times that somebody called and it was a long wait and they just didn't have the time. But like I said, by Friday, the phone queues were really light.
So is there any numbers of how many people complained that they were not able to get in before the deadline in order to request a ballot? In the news,
No, we didn't hear any.
that was in the news media, that's why I asked you.
Yeah. I think that there was somebody that may have spoken to a reporter, but we didn't get any notification. We didn't get angry emails. We received questions from the media only, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of this was caused by people, me being one of them. I didn't call you, but usually get a ballot within 2 days.
Right.
And a week had gone by and I still didn't have a ballot.
Right.
And people were panicking.
Yes.
And they were calling up and saying, I need another ballot, I need another ballot.
Right.
Okay.
Or putting in the request.
Thus, the justification for not saying your ballot has been mailed.
Yes.
Now it's just, oh, I've got it.
Yes, yes. Well, we will still send something in our notifications because people want to know. But there's no way for us to send individual notifications to voters when their actual ballot has been sent to the post office. And so, we're workshopping some languaging that maybe your ballot will be mailed. Ballots will be mailed starting on this date, which is the date that it would be, and check back.
Are you mailing in 2 days or 3?
Typically, it's 2.
2?
Yeah. It was a full week this time.
Okay.
Not ideal.
Well, yeah, delayed.
Yes.
Yeah,
Not ideal.
but typically it's 2 days.
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's 1 day if it's a little election.
Yeah. Okay, chain of custody documents.
Yes, so I just wanted to acknowledge, and this will also be in our after action report presented to the board, which we'll make sure that you have access to as well. After the last meeting that I was here for, I went back and looked at the information that I hadn't seen yet, even though Vanessa had sent it. I apologize. And frankly, I was embarrassed by the sort of casual way that our staff was handling the chain of custody documentation. I'm really confident in our processes, and I know that there isn't a single person who works in our office who isn't conscious about if you have a ballot, if you're with ballots, you have somebody with you. You're never alone with a ballot. If ballots are dropped off, you have people receiving those. It's a very structured process, and they were really casual about the documentation. And so since then, we have redesigned the chain of custody documents. We've beefed up the training. We've implemented more checks and balances where as you suggested, Chair Buckle, don't receive it if there aren't 2 signatures on it. All of this was implemented in this last election. We're redacting some of the information, and those will be up online, so you'll be able to see how we did. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hoping that it's better. If there are some issues, then we will consider additional retraining or conversations with folks who aren't taking it as seriously. So.
Thank you for that, and I'll wait to see what I see.
Yeah, I'm confident that it's going to be better. Obviously, there are times when there are just human error, and like I said, there are a lot of moving pieces. There are things always happening, but that was egregious, and you know, we want to make improvements. Like I said, I'm confident about our processes, but that doesn't help the public trust when, you know, we have missing signatures, and that's something that we're really committed to.
Okay, anybody have any other questions on chain of custody?
No. But thank you.
Excuse me, the last 2 items again are from the Governor and the Secretary of State's Task Force on Elections. The first one being security advancements. It looks like they're trying to do some interesting things. I think it's going to be exceptionally difficult to achieve what they're trying to achieve with the recommendations that they've got, because since the counties all function independently, and I know there's at least 2 counties that have different equipment and different voting processes than we do, one of them being Maricopa. You know, we have ES&S equipment. Maricopa County uses Dominion. We have Central Count. They use vote center tabulating machines. So coming up with standard procedures that are going to function uniformly across the state is going to be an interesting process. But I mean, I think there are certain things they can address, but I think you're going to get to the point where once you get to a certain point in the process, it's like, okay, you guys are kind of on your own because you're different from everybody else. So I know Pinal County has just finished building a new facility, putting new equipment in it, which makes them different. Again, same manufacturer, but they've got different equipment than we do. But my understanding is it's still interchangeable if they need to function as our backup. So I look forward to seeing what the Secretary of State's office comes up with as far as this is concerned. I'm not as optimistic as I probably should be, but I think it's a great idea. I just see it as a very difficult process because there's not uniformity throughout the state as far as the 15 counties are concerned. I know, having served on the vote count verification committee for a couple of years, it is state law that every county do a hand count audit. The most I ever saw were 9. And it's always blamed on party participation. They couldn't get the party representation to do the hand count audits. So it was like, well, if the parties don't want to play, I guess we're not going to do an audit. And I think it's closer to 15 now than it has been recently, but I don't think we're getting hand count audits out of all of the counties yet. So if you can't get what's already in statute, it's hard to imagine that we're going to standardize something that's not in statute. So we'll see how it turns out. The other one was election worker code of conduct. And I think that's, from my perspective, great. Again, it's going to be, can you get something that addresses the needs of all 15 counties? Tell you in the processes that we have, I can tell you problems that I ran into. Elections changed the rules from the last election to this election, and nobody told us, nobody told me anyhow, that walk in there. It was like, okay, no cell phones in the tabulation room. I found out about it when I pulled out my phone to take a call. But it's just the observers that can't have phones in the phone room. The staff are all running around with a cell phone. I said, if they can get it from me, they can get it from them. I mean, either there's phones or there's no phones, but
Yeah.
it's you know, it's an issue that needs to be addressed, and we put little yellow and black marks on the floor, and you can't cross those little yellow and black marks, except for the fact that they moved the tables over, and one of the observers was sitting outside the line. Well, either you can cross the line or you can't cross the line, but let's come up with a process, and let's make sure everybody understands what the process is. And I see the same thing happening here as far as workers' code of conduct is concerned. It's like, it either applies or it doesn't apply. It doesn't, you know, it's not one of those, well, we think it ought to apply to these people, but it doesn't need to apply to those people. I'm sorry, it doesn't work well that way. And I shared my concerns with Mr. Wisely, and I will share them with Director Hargrove at an appropriate time. But, you know, if you want people to play, let them know what the rules are in your sandbox, and everybody in the sandbox plays by the same rules.
Yeah.
Commissioner Tillman.
And the rules are very different in the recorder's office, and they changed without warning to the parties. For example, we had observers show up on a Saturday, and we're told no observers allowed on the weekend. We used to be able to observe in the phone room, and we used to be able to walk around in the processing room, but now we have to sit in one spot next to the wall and where you can't see anything. And this is very discouraging. People come as observers largely, at least on our party, is to back up that you do a really good job. And now we can't say that anymore because we don't know.
I absolutely understand the concern, but I will say we did send out a letter to all of the parties, including yours, letting them know about the changes, and just to give a little bit of historical context to those changes. We were having some issues, observers intimidating the workers. We keep a list of all the observers and issues. We deal with the parties directly. However, we chose the person who is the liaison. However, we started asking the other counties on some of our calls, what do you allow in your ballot processing facility? And we were very surprised to find out that we were the only county that allowed observers to walk around and see screens that had personal identifying information on them. That triggered a conversation with the county attorney, who absolutely advised us to stop allowing that practice, and told us that we were probably breaking the law prior to that. And so we worked to notify the parties. We sent out a packet ahead of the early voting with information. We actually asked them to come and tour and ask questions, and nobody showed up. And I spoke with the chair of the Democratic Party who didn't have any questions. I talked to him on the phone. I answered his questions. He said, well, you answered my questions. I don't need to come to the tour and see it. But we did have a tour set up prior so that folks could understand where the observers were going to be, and you know, we asked that the liaisons and the party leadership share that information with anyone who was going to come and observe, because we understood that it was going to be a change. We can't control that, obviously. We do have to have a certified letter from the party letting us know the schedule and when observers are going to come, and we didn't have anybody requested or scheduled for a Saturday, so I'm not sure where the mix-up was with that. We never know if we're going to be doing signature verification on Saturday. Sometimes we don't even have any signature verification for the afternoon shift. We do our best to notify the party representative that we're done for the day. We're moving on to something else. But that's a day-to-day thing. And so I can appreciate the concern, I really can, but we did the right thing in stopping that practice. Our signature verifiers are looking at a voter record when they're verifying a signature, oftentimes. And so that information is protected by statute.
Another change that you made was the hours that observers could be there. So we could no longer be there at the time when you're receiving ballots from the post office, which observing the chain of custody from the post office.
I don't think the times changed.
We were told we could only come from 10 to 4.
I think that's what the times have always been, my understanding. No?
No.
Yeah.
There may be some problem with communication from our party chair, but they pretty much forward everything from you to us.
Okay.
So I don't understand why that would happen.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think you're absolutely right on changing the process, because PII should not be that visible. But did you have any kind of a notice posted that the rules were changed so that a walk-in observer would have something to reference?
So yes, we have the observer guidelines that we list to every observer that comes in and have them read through. And in this case, we highlighted that difference because there were people who are used to coming and observing for years and years.
Yep.
I personally had that discussion with several groups of people and just pointed out what was happening in the room and highlighted the changes, but we asked them to read those. We're now asking for signatures so that they understand the expectations. And so, yes, we did.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, future agenda items. Vanessa, next month, elections of officers. And for those of you that haven't been around that one before, please remember that the chair and the vice chair need to be of differing political parties. No monopolies. And if you wouldn't mind doing a presentation that you're doing to the Board of Supervisors, to this group,
Sure.
as well as elections, put both of those items on the agenda. And anything else you come up with between now and then. Next meeting is scheduled for January 17th, 2025.
So I would still like John Roberts Brakey to give us a presentation sometime in the first quarter.
Okay,
You know, I'd kind of like to set the date as soon as we can. Not necessarily for the January meeting, but if we can say, well, it's going to be January or February or
Right.
March, I would like to know that as early
okay.
as possible.
Can you get a hold of John and find out what works for him around our meeting timelines?
Yeah.
And probably not January if we're going to hear something from elections, and something
Concur.
from the recorder's office. We don't need to add a third dog and pony show to that. Okay, anything else?
Just one little thing, when we're doing the minutes, if we can just reference if it's, I know there are two Smiths on that commission, if it's T. Smith or M. Smith. In
Oh,
case
okay.
somebody's going through minutes years from now, then they can at least know who it was.
Point taken,
Thank you.
for those of us that don't have that common of a last name.
Yeah.
Okay, hearing nothing else, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, congratulations.
Thank you.
At the end of, oh, the quiz on this book,
Open book or,
next month's meeting.
is it gonna be open book or do we have
Things have already changed though since this was
to really?
You get the impression in reading the cover letter, though, that it incorporates the November changes.
Huh. It's also abridged, which I was surprised to find out.
This is a bridge.
It says selected provisions. It's not,
Still, yeah.
it's not. Yeah,
Well,
your
this is
best-
both the law and the Constitution.
Well,
So
they
this is
do,
the
they do
Constitution.
like full excerpts from different sections of the law that in 16, so better.
Yeah.